In 750 CE, a new dynasty came to power in the Islamic world, and the first thing they did was abandon the old capital and build an entirely new city from scratch. Not just any city, a perfect circle ringed by massive walls with the caliph's palace at its exact center. That city was Baghdad, and its construction tells you everything about what the Abbasid revolution was really about. To understand why Baghdad was built, you have to understand what was falling apart. Start with the empire the Abbasids replaced, the Umayyad caliphate. The Umayyads ruled from Damascus, a city that faced the Mediterranean, the old Roman and Byzantine world. Their empire stretched from the Indus River to the Iberian Peninsula. Enormous. But by the early 700s, westward expansion had hit a wall. In 717, the Umayyads besieged Constantinople, the Byzantine capital. They failed. In 733, an Arab army pushed deep into France and was turned back by the Franks at the Battle of Poitiers. 2 major campaigns, 2 dead ends. The Islamic Empire wasn't collapsing, far from it, but the Mediterranean frontier was closing, and the empire's future growth, its energy, its center of gravity, all of that was going to shift. The question was, in which direction? Beneath the surface, the Umayyad state was fracturing, and not for one reason. Multiple grievances were converging. First, the mawali. Mawali were non-Arab converts to Islam, especially Persians who come from Zoroastrian or Christian backgrounds. Islam promised them equality. The Umayyad state didn't deliver. Arabs held the top positions, collected the privileges, and treated converts as second-class citizens. Second, the Shiites. They believed the caliphate, the political leadership of the Muslim community, rightfully belonged to the Prophet Muhammad's family. The Umayyads were not that family. Third, rivalries among Arab tribes themselves, plus a civil war that erupted within the Umayyad dynasty in 743. Now, historians debate the relative weight of these causes. Chris Wickham argues the revolution wasn't primarily about Arab versus non-Arab. Fair enough, but what's clear is that discontent was multi-layered. The Abbasid revolution drew on all of it. The revolt broke out in Persia, not in the traditional centers of Arab power. By 749, the Abbasids had seized control. The Abbasids themselves were early followers of Muhammad, though not particularly heroic ones. They rode to power on Shiite support, promising what amounted to a salvationist theology, a return to austerity, religious purity, a modest caliph guided by faith. So the Abbasids won. Now, what did they actually do with power? They built a city, not renovated, not repurposed, built from nothing. Baghdad rose on the banks of the Tigris River as a perfect concentric circle. The outer ring, massive double walls pierced by 4 gates, each gate named for the direction it faced: the Kufa Gate, the Basra Gate, the Khorasan Gate, the Damascus Gate. Those names alone tell a geographic story. 3 of the 4 point east and south. The middle ring held residential and commercial quarters, and at the exact center, the caliph's palace and the great mosque. This was not organic urban growth, and this was ideology in brick and mortar, a statement about where power sat and which direction it faced, and the location mattered just as much as the design. Baghdad sat just 30 miles from Ctesiphon, the old capital of the Sasanian Persian Empire. Under the Umayyads, Damascus faced the Mediterranean. Under the Abbasids, Baghdad faced Persia, Central Asia, India, and the Silk Road. Same empire, same borders, but a completely different orientation. The center of gravity in the Islamic world had pivoted east. This wasn't just geography. The Abbasids absorbed Persian administrative traditions, bureaucratic methods, court culture, governing philosophy. The caliphate became more cosmopolitan, more administratively sophisticated, and more Persian influenced than anything the Umayyads had built. The Arab-dominated system was giving way to something broader, The mawali, those second-class converts, finally found a state that made room for them, at least partially. But one group did not benefit, the Shiites. Right? They had provided the ideological fuel for the revolution. They'd been promised a caliph from the Prophet's family. They got the Abbasid family instead, related to Muhammad, but not his direct descendants. They'd been promised austerity. They got a lavish Persian-influenced court. They'd hoped for something other than monarchy. They got a thoroughly monarchical caliphate, more centralized than the Umayyads. They'd expected influence in government. They were marginalized almost immediately. Every expectation betrayed. The Abbasids used Shiite energy to seize power, then govern as Sunni monarchs. Right? Step back from the details for a moment. What does this revolution actually tell us? Three things: about empires, about revolutions, and about cities. Each one carries lessons far beyond the 8th century. First, empires reorient. When Western expansion failed, the Islamic world didn't collapse. It pivoted east, and that pivot created one of the most cosmopolitan civilizations in history. Second, revolutions betray their supporters. The Shiites learned that being essential to a revolution doesn't guarantee influence over its outcome. This Sunni-Shiite tension will echo for centuries. Third, cities embody ideology. Baghdad wasn't just a capital. It was a statement, planned, circular, Persian-adjacent, commercially oriented. The city was the policy. Baghdad would become the intellectual capital of the world within a century, the House of Wisdom, the translation movement, the golden age of Islamic science. All of that rested on a political foundation laid in 750, a cosmopolitan empire that drew on Persian, Arab, and eventually Greek traditions. The Abbasid revolution didn't just change a dynasty, it changed what the Islamic world was.